The heartbreaking reality is that sometimes, despite our best intentions, marriage doesn't turn out the way we plan. But before you walk away, it's worth asking, is what you're in worth the fight? And how do I honor God when your marriage isn't meeting your deepest needs?
Not wish
Coming
divorce
up
on my
next
worst
in
enemy.
today's episode.
It literally is a tearing apart. Two literally do become one.
Absolutely.
And there is a tearing apart of that. There is a death, there is a grieving, there is a heartache. It's almost hard to describe if you have not been through it. And so I would not wish it on anyone. There is so much repairing of the heart, the soul, the mind, the spirit that has to happen after a divorce. That if by any means you can make your marriage work, make it work. Do the work. Because divorce is hard. And then when you add children to that, it's even harder. And it leaves a scar.
Action. What is it? 3, 2, 1, action. 3. There you go. 2, 1.
Action.
There you go. Hey family, welcome to another episode of Bennett Life TV. Today we're going to be diving into a conversation that many couples face, but very few talk about. Should I stay or do I leave? My name is Ken and
I'm Dana.
And we're excited to be with you guys today. Listen, I first off want to say thank you guys. Man, we have received such an overwhelming response from people literally across the world. How you feel about today?
I'm excited. Today was actually sparked from a lot of the comments based on the last couple of episodes that we've had. This is kind of the theme that kept jumping out. People saying, I hear what you're saying, but I've been in this 7 years, 10 years, 15, 20 years. Um, I'm at the point where I think I'm ready to leave, and they're asking, how do I know when I'm done?
Yeah. And I think the episode that really sparked so much conversation and really community around. We've had a lot of people get tapped in
Yeah.
and really are getting a lot of from what we've been talking about. But I did a poll, and the poll had something to do about the biggest challenge that most couples face in their relationship. And what came in number 2 was in the area of intimacy, which also is impacting people's decision
Right.
on whether or not they should remain or stay in a relationship. So I am really excited about today's episode
Me
because we
too.
really are going to dig our heels a little bit into what it's going to take. And so listen, if this is your first time checking us out, if you determine that you can get any value from the content shared today, we would really appreciate a like, a share, and drop a comment and let us know how we can pray for you and walk with you in this journey with your relationship. Let's go ahead and get
Absolutely.
started.
Yeah, I mean, we believe in biblical New Testament marriage, but we do have to recognize that salvation doesn't automatically mean marital compatibility. Just because two people love Jesus doesn't mean that they are going to thrive together in their marriage. It takes more than that.
It's good. I think for us because we've really just to give, I guess those who are checking out, you and I have been married for 18 years. We've
Right.
raised 5 children together. And so I would say we've kind of cut our teeth in quite a few things in our relationship. And so, this is an opportunity for us to kind of peel back some of those layers now that we, to a degree, have conquered some of our challenges in our marriage. And one happens to be making a decision on whether or not you want to stay committed to this. I know, from our own personal experience, I've been through a divorce, you've been through a
Right.
divorce, and leading into our relationship. As a matter of fact, at the start of our relationship, we were, I mean, very specific as it relates to making a decision on the front end of our marriage that number one, divorce is off the table.
Right.
We will not consider it. This is going to be a marriage that works. But the reality is, there are some people watching right now. They're kind of in the tension of whether or not they want it. Should I stay? Should I leave? And so let's get into this idea of, do you feel most couples throw everything at it, like this idea of really, really trying, what would you say to the person that feels like I'm trying, but I'm still not getting my needs met? I'm still struggling in this marriage. Even just some of the comments, people
Right.
indicating being in a sexless marriage for 10 years, for others, just feeling like there is no fulfillment, no excitement, no joy. What would you say to that person just leading into this conversation?
Yeah, a lot of times we find in sitting with couples that they're not throwing in the towel because of a lack of trying. Most people really do go into their marriage wanting their marriage to work. Hopelessness begins to set in when they feel like they have exhausted
Mm,
everything that they know to do. So they've done the therapy, they've read the books, they've tried to initiate the conversations, they've tried the forgiving over and over again,
mm,
and it feels like nothing is changing. There has not been any positive or forward movement in whatever area is lacking.
mm. So if we, take a moment and look at this from the perspective of the person that says, I've tried everything,
Hmm.
because I know what that feels like, especially
Hmm.
when we went through several years of being in a marriage where there was a lack of connection and
Right,
intimacy to the level that I desired. And
right,
I remember candidly coming to a point where I said to myself, I've tried everything and I don't know what to do next.
right.
I believe that that statement alone was a powerful statement in the form of a prayer that I believe that heaven responded to. I think what ends up happening sometimes, especially in marriage, is there are things that go on in our relationships where we have to get to the end of ourself for
Right.
God to step in, for grace to step in, for all of the elements that strengthen the relationship. As long as we're head first in trying to do everything we think we need to do to make it work based on how we think it should be, I just realized that a lot of my years of frustration had a lot to do with me kind of being in the way and wanting it to be curated the way I wanted it, when in reality, God was using what we were going through as an opportunity to prove faithfulness, number one, and to build character in our relationship. So I would say for me, I can't really speak for you, but I remember saying these words while I was frustrated inside of a marriage that lacked intimacy, that lacked sexual connection, that just left me extremely frustrated. I do not know what to do next.
Yeah.
And if there's a couple listening to me right now, or a spouse, a wife, or husband, I believe that's the best statement you can make, especially when you're considering staying or leaving. What are your thoughts on
Right.
that?
It's so funny while you were talking, I was thinking about all of the things that you tried. And I'm grateful that some of those things did not work
Mm,
because if they had, I don't think you would have matured to the place that you needed to mature. I
gotcha.
don't think you would have done the work on you.
Hmm,
If the things and the tactics and all of the stuff, the tantrums and all of the different things, right? And not all of it was bad, right? Some of them were where you did start out trying to be loving and kind and all of these things. But I think if some of the things that we try to do to force change in our marriage at the expense of our partner,
wow.
or even at the expense of not growing, had worked, I don't think we would have grown out of that.
I felt like at a point in our relationship, I know how we started with you coming out of a relationship that was extremely abusive physically, emotionally, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in the episode. So I felt like I had to spend most of my time protecting you and really just looking out for you. As a matter of fact, in our dating phases, I spent more time being more of a protector and just making sure that you were in a safe space. And what that did, sadly, was establish a foundation, but we really started out in an unhealthy balance, because I, in part, felt like I was leaning more in your direction, giving more, putting out more, catering to your needs, making sure that you're good, but at the same time, I'm silent. And I know sometimes in a relationship, there is a sacrifice. They say marriage is 50-50. I don't believe that. I believe it's 100-100. And there are times in your marriage where you do have to sacrifice your needs for the sake of your partner. but I don't remember where we were or what happened, but I just decided to break the seal on my silence and say, listen, this is how I feel. I'm frustrated. Do you recall when it? Because I vaguely remember when it happened, but I feel like that there was a moment where I just removed the lid of my silence and just started saying how I felt.
Yeah, I think that you were I don't know that you were ever silent about how you felt concerning our sex life. I think I remember us sitting down and having a conversation for the first time outside of the bedroom, outside of this being a like, you know, what are we doing? Are we doing anything tonight? Like, how are you feeling? You got a headache? What's going on? Um, we had a sit down conversation about how you were feeling. This is making me feel rejected. This is making me feel like you were asking the questions. Are you still attracted to me?
Mm,
What's going on with you? Where's your head at? These types of questions that happened well into us already struggling.
gotcha.
So it took a minute for us to get to a place where we were having conversations outside of the bedroom about what was going on or wasn't going on
Hmm.
in the bedroom. And you said something earlier this morning when we were talking about this. You said we've got to try the right things. For the
Hmm.
person who says, "Well, I've tried everything," we've got to try the right things.
Hmm.
And while I agree with that, I think you can do the right things, all the right things, but with the wrong person
Mm,
and still not get good results.
wow. Unpack that a little bit. What do you mean by
It's like planting good seed in bad soil.
okay?
You got to have the right soil, the right environment
Mm,
for something to grow. You can be doing all the right things, but with the wrong person. And by the wrong person, I don't mean you picked wrong, because we always tell people, listen, celebrate your pick,
celebrate your
right? Like,
pick.
this is who you chose. Celebrate your pig. You knew he only had two teeth. Don't be mad now because he eats slow.
Mm,
He only had two teeth when you married him. So celebrate your pig. Don't complain about it now. But the wrong person means the person whose heart is hardened.
mm.
They're not even in a headspace to hear about reconciliation, forgiveness, working on this. They're not willing to hear about counseling because their heart is already hardened. The wrong person is a person who's already made up their mind. They don't want this
That's
anymore.
good. That's good.
Or the person who is only interested in placing the blame.
Mm,
They're not willing to own any responsibility in what's going on in the marriage. That's what makes them the wrong person.
that's good.
Not so much, well, he's 20 pounds heavier now. I'm not attracted to him anymore. He's the wrong person. No, no, no. I'm talking about the condition of the heart, the condition of the mind, the condition of the soul, and how vested they are in still making something work within the marriage.
That's good. I think a lot of couples, I know, we have, with us being married for nearly 2 decades and then being pastors and active in
Mhm.
ministry. And we're surrounded by a lot of couples in our church.
Mhm.
And we've met with couples that were on the fence of this idea of divorce, on whether or not they were going to make this work. And one of the things that we had to help people understand is that we don't like to throw the word divorce around. However, I believe that even in scripture, you find that divorce was permissible because of the hardness of people's heart.
Right.
I think Moses made some concessions for that because people are just, the position and the posture of their heart make it difficult. And one of the things we like to tell couples, especially even as we're kind of talking through this episode, as you're considering whether or not you want to leave or stay, I think we have to start first at the point of your heart.
Mhm.
Ask yourself the
Right.
critical question: is your heart willing to be softened to allow God to step in and heal where there are flaws?
Right.
There's nothing like talking to a couple and sitting in a room and both of them are on two separate ends of the spectrum. And I want to make reference to something that you made mention over breakfast this morning. You said marriage is a deeply individualistic decision. And I think that is so, so important, especially when you're at the crossroad of
Right.
whether or not this is going to, if this is going to stick and we're going to go all the way with this. It's a decision I think each person has to come to individually
Mm.
before they can come to it collectively. What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. We can't tell you, for people who dropped in the comments, should I stay, should I go? Or even couples when they
Mm,
come to us and they're like, should we stay, should we go? Only you can answer that
okay,
question.
okay.
I can't answer that question for you because it's an individual choice.
Mm,
I could tell you, hey, I think there's hope for this, you can stay, but you're laying in the bed next to that person
right,
every
right.
night. You're the one who's having to look within yourself and
Mm,
find forgiveness and patience and grace and all of that. I'm not that person doing the work for you. So only you know if you can get to a place where you know what your barometer
mhm,
is.
mhm,
And that's why I say God knows who to put with who.
mm,
Because there's some people, and we've seen this in our own ministry, who have survived multiple instances of infidelity.
mm,
Their partner didn't just step out once, but this has been a pattern, and they were able to forgive time and time again and come together and address what was going on, and now they're thriving.
mm.
We have other couples who all he did was send a wrong text message, and sis is like, I'm out. I'm not sticking around for this
Well,
foolishness. And so it's what you have the temperament, what you have the grace to forgive, what you have the grace to walk through with someone. For the majority of our marriage, you're an entrepreneur.
mhm.
That I'm graced to walk through that with you.
Wow,
Even though our temperaments are different, our risk tolerances are different, I'm graced to walk through that with you.
that's good.
And whereas someone else be like, child, ain't no way. You mean 1 month he made 30,000 and the next month he made 3,000? Ain't no way. Ain't no way I can. You mean it's been 3 months since the business producing? Ain't no way.
Mm,
I'm graced for that.
that's
God,
good.
so God knows who to put with who. And just like you know what you can forgive, you know what your non-negotiables are, you know what your heart can take, you know what level of work you're willing to put into
You
something.
want to speak to, because I remember, when you were sharing your story with me regarding your previous marriage, you felt like it was too little, too late. And you talk about that,
Yeah,
like how you came to that decision and give because I really want this episode to reach someone.
yeah,
Because
absolutely.
I believe under the banner of Christian, most of us stay in relationships one out of fear of disappointing God.
Right.
I think we've conveyed this idea that if I walk away with this, God won't forgive me. I've got a stain on
Mhm,
me. I won't ever experience the joy of what it means to be in a marriage. And I've seen more couples in ministry unhappy. And
mhm,
it's almost sickening to the stomach. Like I see more people active in ministry, doing ministry unhappy.
mhm.
So I really want to help someone listening to me right now. Let's make a decision to be honest with ourselves and really put because I know we had a lot of things hit us that kind of tested the endurance of our marriage. But I also remember candidly talking with you when we first kind of became friends and you were sharing with me too little too late. Talk about that a little bit. I really want
Yeah.
to really help
You
somebody.
said a lot there that I hope we get an
Okay.
opportunity to unpack.
Okay.
While scripture does make room for divorce, I'm just, for the person who has not gone through a divorce, let me say to you, I would not wish divorce on my worst enemy.
Mm, mm,
It literally is a tearing apart.
mm.
Two literally do become one.
Absolutely.
And there is a tearing apart of that. There is a death, there is a grieving, there is
Yes.
a heartache. It's almost hard to describe if you have not been through it.
Mm,
And so I would not wish it on anyone. There is so much repairing of the heart, the soul, the mind, the spirit that has to happen after a divorce. That if by any means you can make your marriage work, make it work.
mm.
Do the work,
That's good.
because divorce is hard. And then when you add children to
Oh
that,
my goodness.
it's even harder. And it leaves a scar.
Wow.
It leaves a scar. I am in a happy, healthy marriage. I enjoy our marriage. But my first marriage, there's a scar there
Mm,
from that
absolutely.
divorce.
Mhm.
And so let me talk about the too little too late. um, did all the things.
Mhm.
I begged, please let's go to counseling. I begged, please let's go to church. I begged, please let's take some time to really figure out what's going on with us, important to us. And I feel like it was doomed from the start.
Mm.
I had no business getting married. I certainly had no business marrying the person I married. So let's just say that.
Yeah.
But I had so much faith in the power of God that I felt like even with me being not ready for marriage and marrying the wrong person, that God could come in and fix it.
Absolutely.
But I was the only one fighting. It wasn't until I filed divorce papers that my ex was like, well, let's go to counseling. And even in that, even in the counseling session, he was basically like, you tell her she got to stay with me.
Mm.
And the counselor was like, I can't tell her she has to stay with you. What are the reasons she's unhappy? What's the reason she filed? And when I began to talk about the infidelity, I began to talk about the physical and the verbal and the mental and the financial abuse, she was like, well, sir, I can't in good conscience
Mhm.
tell someone to stay in something that does not seem
That's good.
helpful.
Wow.
And so now you want to send flowers to my job. Now you want to go to counseling. Now you want to become a deacon of the church and do all of these things. And at this point, now my heart is hardened
That's good.
and I'm no longer willing to be open to reconciliation because I've spent years and I wasn't sure or secure that this was a genuine effort
Mm.
in something that he was going to sustain. I felt like this was a last ditch effort to get me to tear up the divorce papers, to come back, and he had no real intention on changing.
That's good.
And what I've seen since that point lets me know that my intuition was correct
Wow.
because there hasn't been any change.
Man, you've said a mouthful just in that because I'm certain somebody's listening right now,
Mhm.
trying to figure it out, trying to, vacillating on whether or not their intuition, to trust their intuition and trust their discernment. And prayerfully, after today's episode, we'll be able to provide some form of language and
Right.
possibly a matrix that they could use to try to determine for themselves because you had to come to that decision. Now, I do want to say that there are things that are going to just naturally happen, especially depending upon the assignment of a relationship,
Okay.
that's going to threaten the future of that relationship. For
Right.
us, it was ministry. For us, it was even your mental health challenges. We spent a lot of years dealing with that. I remember, plainly, in the middle of a workday, and your therapist, who you were on the phone with, said, "Listen, you need to stop what you're doing, stop right now, and I need you to get to the house." I'm like, "Well, I'm in the middle of doing something. I'm in the middle of checking out." She says, "No, sir, I need you to hear what I'm saying. I need you to get home, and I need you to get home right now." Those are things that were taking place
Mhm.
that that test the character, the endurance, and the
Mhm.
strength of our relationship. Business pressures,
Mhm.
as you mentioned earlier, ministry
Mhm.
responsibility, and even our individualistic goals. There
Right.
were some goals you had that kind of were on the back burner in the early years of our relationship that really threatened the longevity of our
Mhm.
relationship. So I want to make sure that every couple knows that, every relationship is not created equal. There are things that are unique to your marriage to really develop and create endurance for you guys that may threaten whether or not you make a decision to stay or to leave. But I want to make sure that they understand that there are going to always be moments, I don't think there's not a couple that exists that has not come to this place where they're like, this is pulling more than I initially anticipated. And I want to make sure I say this correctly, that the strength of any marriage isn't revealed until you reach the crossroad of staying versus leaving. I
Right.
think there comes a point in every relationship, in every marriage, where you decide, am I going to be an adult in this? Am I really going to stick with this? Is this who I am? Is this going to be the person I'm spending the rest of my life? Because once the haze of I do passes on that wedding day, reality kind of sets in. And possibly maybe in another episode, we'll talk about the stages of marriage and
Mhm.
the stages of relationship. But I feel that we've gone through those seasons. What would you say?
Right. I don't know that there was ever a moment where I said, I'm out.
Okay.
And that's because I took very seriously this idea that divorce was not an option, that I wasn't going to do that again. And because we were such good friends, I felt like if I can't make marriage work with
Wow,
my best friend,
that's good.
then I just don't need to be married.
Mm,
Like I felt like this context was probably the best that I was going to get at making something work with somebody because you're my best friend. So I'm like, if I can't make it work with him, then I just can't make it work
wow,
with anybody.
wow.
So, but there have been things like what you just said, exes and business and ministry and all of that that have tested our marriage to the point where I've been like, okay, if there's no reprieve here, yeah, 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 you know?
Wow. Okay.
And so there have been things that have certainly tested the fabric of
Mm,
that commitment to not letting divorce be an
wow.
option.
I want to real quickly speak to some statistics that I have here that I think is hopefully going to encourage somebody. By the way, if you're getting any value from the content today, listen, let us know in the comments. Let us know kind of what is your biggest challenge right now, and we'll do our best. I think over the last several weeks, we've tried to respond to just about every comment, but we really, really want to know how can we partner with you in your marital journey? What's your challenge? How can we pray for you? But here are some statistics that I checked out. For couples who remain together through times of conflict, 86% report that 5 years later, their marriage has improved. Then double that, 10 years later,
Mhm.
80% of these couples report being very, very happy in their relationship. So that lets me know that there's hope for a
Mhm.
relationship that's on the brinks of potentially considering an out. And so what we want to do is if both parties, I think this is important, if both parties are genuinely trying, I believe the relationship gets better. I really believe the quality of the relationship gets better. And so what we want to do is let's go ahead and help them out in this episode. I want to help provide them some form of matrix that they can use to objectively decide whether or not this is something they should, continue to throw everything at. Now, once again, we're not here. Prayerfully, our goal is in your marriage that there's some wisdom provided where it creates some endurance. I'm not here to tell you go ahead and file for divorce. That's a decision you have to come to on your own. You have to decide whether or not this is what you want. But I want to at least give them some language to consider whether or not they got something to work with and let them enter that decision themselves. And so the first bit of advice that I think is so critical is assess with honesty your desire for your relationship. Let's get real with each other. I think, we've had a lot of real, honest conversations here lately.
Right.
Like, I feel like once we passed year 15, we're like, okay, I,
Listen, you're not going nowhere. I'm not going nowhere, but I'm not going to sit around and be miserable with you.
right, right.
So if we're going to do this, then let's do this. Let's stop, playing games and living around the elephant in the room. Let's have the conversation that needs to have if we really are going to do this.
It's good. It's good. I think um I'm talking to a couple in a relationship that is kind of on the brinks of considering divorce, and it gets a little challenging and possibly a little rocky. I have to ask the individual, listen, be honest with me and be honest with yourself. Is this really what you
You
want?
want.
I think that we have to start there. Ask yourself, is this really what you want? I can't want this more than you want it for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And as much as I believe in exercising faith, as much as I believe in prayer, as much as I believe in therapy and additional resources, those avenues are not going to yield you fruit or produce fruit if your heart is bent on not making it work. I think that is the first step. If we're going to move away from this idea of should I stay or should I leave, I have to be honest with me and let me help you. The choice is yours. I believe God will not overstep the boundaries of your will, and He definitely won't overstep the boundaries of your will for your relationship. Just like you got to choose your spouse, you got to make a decision on whether or not you want to stay. What are you thinking about that?
Marriage is one of those things that you don't really know what it feels like to be in it until you're in it.
Mm, okay.
We can watch as many rom-coms as we want and Lifetime and Hallmark movies and all of that and read romance novels and listen to our friends talk about what marriage is like, but you really don't get it until you're in it. And I think some people get married thinking they genuinely want this. They genuinely love the person that is standing across from them that they're saying I do to. But when you get in it, I think
What's the
they
difference?
realize this isn't what I thought it was going to be and I don't like it.
Mm,
I just don't like it. And when we're sitting with couples, I can tell the ones that are just like, I, I love him or I love her, but marriage just isn't what I thought it
mm,
was going to be. And I don't know that I really want to fight for marriage. It's not that I don't want to fight for that person.
mm.
I don't know that I want to fight for marriage because marriage isn't what I thought it was going to be.
So how do you handle that being a Christian? I mean, in church, we it's just about a part. We believe in godly marriages. We believe it's the will of God for you to be together. How do you grapple with being a child of God, saying to yourself, I don't want this? I mean, let's talk about that because I don't think the church has enough conversation around this. So how do you manage that? What is it? Am I a bad person because
I think it stinks that you made a covenant commitment without. I think the person that sits there and is like, you know, mm, there's a little bit of a lack of maturity there
okay,
because marriage is a covenant.
okay.
It's not like when you go and sign up for a job and like in Texas at will employment, you can quit whenever you get ready. Covenant is a little bit different.
Mhm,
It's I'm all in no matter what.
okay.
So I think there's a little bit of lack of maturity there. I don't think we set people up with the right expectations for marriage. We set people up with weddings and honeymoons and having kids and two incomes and guilt-free sex.
Mm,
We don't talk to people about what happens when he loses his job and can't get another one.
mm.
We don't talk to them about what if she can't have kids. We don't talk about what happens when you get married and he gains 50 pounds in the first 5 years, or he starts balding and you don't like it,
Watch it.
or,
Watch it.
or
This is an intentional decision.
it
I should. I
is, and
should.
I love it. We don't set people up for the doing life together part of marriage
Okay.
because it's not always butterflies and it's not always great sex, especially after you got two kids under the age of 3, you getting it in whenever you can, whenever those rascals take a nap. You don't have time for flowers and chocolates and candy. You're just
Oh,
trying to get it in between diaper changes. Like there's just so much that goes into marriage and doing life together forever for the rest of your life
mm,
that I don't know that we always set people up with the tools that they need to make a decision as to whether or not they are mature enough and ready enough to fight for it.
okay. You want to work. Let's kind of go to the next point here with that,
Yeah.
which I think is good. I'll let you lead with that.
You have here evaluate the current state of the relationship. Where are we really?
Mm,
Is this what we want? Um, and let's call it.
mm.
Let's call a spade a spade. Where are we really?
What do you say? Because I've seen some couples try to make a relationship work, make a marriage work while actively in infidelity. Like I'm like, how are you really
You
trying
got
to
a
make
whole
this
side
work?
chick.
You got a whole side piece, a whole side chick. There are things you're doing not to really promote the health and the longevity of this marriage. I mean, let's kind of deal with that. Am I obligated to let you make it for the sake of this being a Christian marriage?
Well, we keep saying Christian
I
marriage.
was because
If it's not
because
honoring God, it's not a Christian marriage. You might be
100%.
Christian, but if you're married, your marriage is supposed to reflect the relationship between Christ and the church.
Mhm.
If you are married and you got a side piece, are you really invested? If
Right.
you're married and you really can't stand your spouse, y'all are just roommates, her breathing makes you want to run out into traffic, like, then what are we doing?
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying? So we see couples all the time though who are living two completely separate lives. What they have is not even doesn't even resemble marriage.
Mm.
If you did not know they were married, you wouldn't even know they're married.
Wow.
That's how separate their lives are. Then let's just be honest. What do we do? Why are we still in this?
Does
Is it because I don't want to have to give you half? Is it because, up for the kids? Is it because we've got a ministry together?
Wow.
Like, there's a lot of reasons people stay in marriage that really isn't marriage.
Okay.
And I know that we all get to build our own marriages, right? According to our own, God sets the foundation and we build it the way that fits us. I get that. But there are some things that we are calling marriage that really is not
Wow.
marriage. And if you're not honoring one another, if it does not look like covenant,
Mm.
then it's not marriage. You guys are just spending time together and keeping each other's last name for whatever
For the
reason
sake
I
of
don't
kids.
know.
And I've seen, excuse me, I've seen couples stay together for the sake of kids. What are your thoughts on that?
We raise kids
To leave.
to leave, and then you're left with what? And believe it or not, your children know that you're miserable.
Mm.
They can pick up on the fact that mommy and daddy really don't like each other. Even if you all don't argue in front of them, you can tell couples that don't like each other. You can be sitting across a room in a restaurant and tell two couples that are in love and a couple where they really don't like each other. Your children live in the house with you. They know. They see how you light up when you're with your friends or doing something that you really love and you don't light up like that at home. Our kids are not crazy.
Mm.
And so and I'm not saying that you don't there's beauty. Our children have seen us weather rough stuff.
Yeah.
We don't argue in front of our kids, but we don't lie to our kids about where we are. I've said to our kids before, our daughters have come and asked her sons, "Hey mom, you okay? What's going on?" "Oh, nothing, your daddy just getting on my nerves today." I'm honest with them. But then they see us later on that night hugging each other or kissing each other. That shows them that your daddy can get on my nerves and I
Right.
still love him. I still honor him. Kids need to know you can be upset with your partner and you don't step out on them.
So let me ask you this question because I know, I think, what was it, episode 9? Yeah, episode 9, one of them, where we talked about a sexless marriage. And there were some that had been in a marriage where there was absence of sexual intimacy, 7, 10. Somebody mentioned 20 years.
Mhm.
Do I stay in a sexless marriage? I
It
mean,
is difficult to be in something where one of the fundamental needs of coming together, which is intimacy, one of the fundamental kind of bedrock factors in marriage is intimacy. That's
okay.
just a natural human need. When you're in something where your natural human needs are not being met long term and there's no reprieve, there's no light at the end of the
Tunnel.
tunnel.
Hmm.
There's no, at least in our situation, it was doing like this. We'd make some headway for a couple months and then it'd die off, and we'd make some headway and it'd die off. But we were trying, and we were,
Yeah.
you know, there was some reprieve in there. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
I can't tell somebody to stay or to go, but you know what you have the temperament and you have the faith to stay in.
Mm.
And 20 years without any sex. And we had this conversation. I think it's going to be our next episode.
Probably.
I think we have such a limited perspective on intimacy, sex, pleasure, that we have limited what constitutes sex, how we can have orgasms, how we can be pleasured and satisfied in our relationship.
Mm.
And I think if we had more conversations around just the anatomy of sex, the function of sex, more couples would find, oh, I can still find pleasure in my marriage, even with medical challenges and issues. Oh, I can still find pleasure in my marriage if I look at sex differently.
Mm.
We can bring some excitement back
What
into
does that
this
look
thing.
like?
Well, babe, I think again, I think that's a whole episode in and of itself.
Okay.
But sexual pleasure doesn't just come from penetration.
Mm.
You can be with, if your partner has erectile dysfunction, you can still have a healthy sex life. Because guess what? He doesn't have to get it up for you to get off. But because we don't
Wow.
have those conversations about how do orgasms happen and what are some other ways to have pleasure and where can I touch my partner that's satisfying and provides arousal, we don't have these conversations. Couples think if it's not happen in one or two ways, then we're not having sex. I can't get pleasure. I can't be satisfied. And there's so many other things that couples can do to satisfy each other.
And I think it has a lot to do with desire. I think in the context of being in a marriage, especially if a lack of sexual connection and sexual intimacy is at play, that's creating the divide. I think the absence of desire drastically increases the chances of it not working.
Hmm.
I think if we work on desire, we're like, Lord, like for instance, my prayer, and I've said this before, my prayer is, Lord, let me have a healthy, liberating sexual experience with my wife. I want to make sure she's happy in every area. I think if couples learned individually, like my job is to make sure that my desire remains at a level where I stay interested in making sure that my partner is happy and that I'm also satisfied.
Right.
I think that trues back to this point of where are we really? Do I even have a desire? I
Right.
think that's the other part. You didn't tick me off so much and you've done so much wrong that I have no desire
Yeah.
to even make this work with you. We're just, and a lot of couples, believe it or not, are doing time and doing life together. And it really breaks my heart. And I don't know that God can be glorified in you just passing time with somebody you really don't want to really be with.
Mhm.
I don't see how God is glorified with you making a decision. That's just my gal. I mean, but you got
Other
all of these
gals.
you got all of these other circumstances and situationships on the side
Hmm.
that constantly promote your agenda over God's agenda. You do better releasing that person and letting them move on with their life so that they can finally experience the joy of marriage.
Because when you get to a point where there's so much built up frustration and bitterness and resentment, it is difficult to be Christ-like with your partner. It's difficult to extend grace and mercy and forgiveness and compassion and kindness and all of the attributes of
Mhm.
Christ, all the fruit of the Spirit. It's hard to do that when I'm now frustrated with you and I'm bitter and I'm angry because my deepest needs are not being met. And to your point, how does God get glory out of you cussing your spouse
Mm.
out of you stepping out on your spouse, out of you being mean to your spouse, out of you manipulating your spouse? So if you are saying, I'm in it, I haven't walked away, that's great. But how are you in it?
Wow.
You can still be married, but how are you in it? Are you still honoring your partner? And if you can't, then I think you do need to start having conversations about, can we both get on the same page and invite God into this where he can work on our hearts and we repair this? Or do we just need to walk away so that I can still respect you and treat you the way you deserve to be treated, even though I'm not married to
That's good. That's good. I think, you made a point over breakfast that I want to make sure we touch. You said, like, you can't be married to yourself. You
you?
can't
Right.
be the only one fighting for this. What do you mean by that?
It takes two people.
So how do I get back on pace with fighting?
I think the conversation has to be had of with yourself and with your partner.
Okay.
Do we really want this? Are we just exhausted? And we're just going to say, you know what? Appreciate you, player. It's been a good run, good 15 years. I enjoy, appreciate you. But I'm going to ride on off into the sunset
Sure.
and do something else. Let me leave. And here's one thing that I have said. While I've never said, I want a divorce. I have said, before I break your heart, before I disrespect you, before I just dash all hope of reconciliation, I'll walk away.
Mm.
I'll walk away. If I feel like I am in such a space where I can no longer honor you as my husband, as my friend, as my partner, I can no longer respect the covenant, I'll walk away.
It's good. Want to make sure that we pin the thought that it's important for you to be honest if there's mental, physical, emotional abuse involved,
Mhm.
because you can be in a marriage that's unhealthy, where there's not a lack of where there's not an issue of infidelity, but there's an issue of abuse,
Safety.
of safety. Your objective in that circumstance is to get safe. When we talked about the issue of our lack of sexual connection, we 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 developed a method or an approach in which we would take, which I believe leads to point number 3.
Hmm.
Both of you have to get on the same page with the method in which you're going to take.
Yes.
You have to. Some couples feel as long as they agree on the destination, that's enough, but you have to come to agreement on the method. You want to speak to that for just a second?
Yeah, absolutely. It's like saying, um, we're going to go to Florida and I'm going to drive and you're going to fly.
Mm,
Well, how do we do that when we're one? If we're one person, how we do that? I gave the analogy this morning about the sack race.
mm-hmm.
You remember that when you used to do the
I do.
sack races for field day or whatever at
Mhm.
school, and your leg was kind of tied to the next person?
Mhm.
Well, if I decide I'm going to crawl to the finish line and you decide you're going to hop to the finish line, how do we do that when we're bound together?
That's good.
So we both agree that the destination is the finish line, but we haven't agreed on how we're going to get there.
That's good.
And so I think couples have to, once you decide, yep, we're gonna stick this out, we're gonna make it work. Well, then what does that look like? And then we both have to get on the same page.
That's good.
We have couples that come to us and they're like, okay, we're having financial issues. That's our biggest issue in our marriage. It's tearing us apart. It's what's making me want to leave and pack my bags. And they come to an agreement. Uh, the issue is the finances, and we need to fix that.
Mhm.
His thought process is, well, I'm just going to go get a second job. I'm going to bring more money in.
Mhm.
Her thought process is, well, I'm just going to start budgeting.
Mhm.
Well, she's over here budgeting and he's not.
Mm.
So,
That's good.
although he's bringing more money in, he's not sticking to the budget. Now she's frustrated. Well, y'all haven't agreed on the method.
I think the challenge for some couples, and I know in a season of our relationship, we were more focused than we were growth focused. There
Absolutely.
is a danger in being in a relationship where it's more goal conscious than it is growth conscious. I think sometimes we are so infatuated with couples who are successful that we
Power
spend more
couple.
power couples. I remember that term was like very popular. Oh, they're the next power couples or hashtag couple
Couple
goals
goals.
or something of that nature. And so what happens is you're fixated on meeting goals and you're not growing together. So what happens is you guys become great business partners.
Mm-hmm.
You become great parents for your children. You become great at what you do. And once you reach the goal, you have nothing else after that. And you know, you hear stuff like, "Oh, we've just kind of outgrown each other. Kind of we live separate lives. We don't have, you know, we just on two different pages." And it's because there's a gray area, and it can be dangerous to be so fixated on goals that you stop growing. And I really want to make sure that every couple, especially, you know, from talking to you right now, and you can relate to this, evaluate if the issue within the relationship is you've been fixated on the goal than just growing individually and collectively. I think it
Yeah.
has to happen in both ways. This challenge of being so fixated on goals while neglecting the connection between the two of you is so, so important that I think that's where a lot of couples are. What would you say?
I agree. There was a point in our marriage where glad that we shut down the real estate aspect of our business.
Mm,
Not, and this was actually, we stopped doing it for a while before we entered into that deal that we talked about in our first couple of
mhm,
episodes that cost us a lot. Because I said all of this time we have been great partners.
mhm,
We made great business partners. I just enjoyed getting a chance to just be your wife,
mm,
not talk about a budget, a project, be a
mhm,
GC, what was next, just being your wife. And although I liked being able to partner with you on these various projects, I realized that that consumed the majority of our conversations.
mm.
Even in the bed, we were taking these projects with us to bed. I just enjoyed being able to talk to you about something other than lumber and sheetrock and tile choices and going to floor and decor. Like I just appreciated being able to just be your wife.
Oh,
And so I agree with that wholeheartedly. And the danger is you look up and you've built a
businesses,
lot
raise children.
without building your marriage.
Hmm.
Your marriage stayed small while you invested and built everything else.
Wow.
And those things, kids go off and leave and they have their own families and their own lives, you know. And so it's just, you have to be very careful that you're investing in the growth of your marriage, not just staying together. Your marriage, the health of it, the beauty of it,
Mhm.
the richness of it should be growing. We went to this past weekend, some friends of ours celebrated
30
30
years.
years of marriage
Shout out to the Goldens.
to the Goldens. It was a beautiful ceremony. She looked amazing in her
Yeah.
dress. He looked so handsome and dapper. Everything was beautiful. You could tell they put so much thought into every moment of the
Mm,
ceremony and the reception. It was beautiful. But what I just kept choking back tears watching them was 3
decades.
decades. And they were talking about different points in their marriage, and other couples that had known them for a significant amount of time kept talking about how much they had grown.
Mm.
That was huge for me. Not just we thugged it out for 30 years. No, we spent the last 30 years growing individually and collectively. And this is the beauty of that.
That's good. What do you feel like we did to back out of being so goal focused that we minimize being growth conscious? What can you think of a
When
step?
the light
Hmm.
switch, for me, we did a lot fast.
Mm,
We did a lot fast. When I think about how much we did being so young, we did a lot fast. We were living in $1 million houses in our 20s.
mm,
Not once, not twice, 3 times in our 20s. We had a business that was generating some months 60, $70,000 a month. This isn't bragging. This is just counting
mhm,
just some of the things that we young in our 20s, early 30s. Um, any car,
mm,
I was driving my dream car in my 20s, you know, um, shopping sprees and just different things. When we had Christmas with the Bennetts, people, over 100 people in our home, and everyone walked away with a gift.
mm.
We were doing things and we would every year sit down and write out our goals as a
Goals.
family
We
for the
did.
year. And we would, at the following year, be able to check off, we did that, we did that, we did that, we did that. All of these things we were doing, right? And we had God in the center of it. We were serving in our church, we were tithing, we were giving, we were doing our best to honor God and all of those things. But when it got to the point where I had done all the things, I had the degrees, I had the title I wanted. I was making the salary I'd always wanted. I had the corporate card and the 2 cell phones and the, Bentley in the garage and all this stuff. And there were moments where I look over and I'm like,
I don't know.
I don't know him.
Mm,
What's going on in his mind?
mm,
Where's his heart? Where are we? Why are we not? Why do I feel like there's this distance between us? Now what? And it's not to take anything away from having ambition and goals. That's great, right? Like I'm glad we made that choice to cut budgets and buy our first home and all that. I'm proud of the things that God allowed us to do because his hand was on, his grace allowed us to do those things, right? I'm not saying that we were wrong in pursuing those things. I'm saying we were wrong in pursuing those things at the expense of growing our marriage.
That's good.
And sometimes it's difficult to do everything all at once.
Mm-hmm.
We were trying to raise kids, we were trying to grow a ministry.
Mm.
We didn't even have time for us.
Wow.
Now I'm like, I've done all the things.
Things, yeah, it don't matter now.
I just want to kick it with my boo, right? The size of the house doesn't matter. What's in the garage doesn't matter. What color the bottom of my shoes are don't matter. What's in my I don't need another thing. My focus, my attention is on this.
Love it. Love it.
And it's not that I didn't care about this before, but life has a way, people have a way, social media has a way, your own ego has a way of being the driving force, and you lose sight of what's really important.
That's good.
This is the one thing that I said forever to. Not my job, not my degrees. I said I would spend the rest of my life with you. So why the heck wouldn't I spend my energy building this?
It's good. That's good. Man, listen, this has been rich. I genuinely believe this has been a rich conversation, and hopefully, what we've shared up to this point has given you some direction and prayerfully courage to say, one, there's still hope for my marriage, that God is not through with me. And if you have to make the choice decision to part ways, do your best to make sure that God is involved in it. But I do want you to know that there's still hope. We are the testament of the grace and the mercy of God in a relationship that had all the signs of
This ain't
not
gonna
gonna
work.
work.
I think people even were like,
Like, yeah,
yeah,
these two here,
it's not gonna work.
this is not gonna work. So,
I think I don't even say I'm salty about it, but I remember when we first started dating, we were going to a church. You had started going to the church before
I
me.
did, yeah.
And I felt like they had a young lady picked out for you. Now, listen, she was cute. Nothing against her at all. She was very cute. But they were a little salty to see me come along because they had already picked out this other young lady for you. And I think they kind of poo-pooed on our engagement because they really wanted you to marry her. And we ran into her a few years after we got married. And I would just like to say, she was still very cute. But your life would have been pretty boring. Your life would have been pretty boring with said individual. Very,
You have definitely kept my
we
life
still
interesting.
feeling,
Yeah, it would have you would have
you know.
you've kept my life interesting. Definitely I have to, yeah, yes, you've kept it very interesting. So let's give the people a couple more pointers that I think are useful for today, that I think is going to be beneficial to considering whether or not you're in something and whether or not it's worth your time. But I do think this next step is evaluate trust and forgiveness. It's this idea, um, is making a decision to trust. And I think what we often tell people to do is to forget, and I don't think that's possible. I don't, once something has occurred, once something has happened to you, once something has taken place, it's hard to forget, but you can move forward. I find that a lot of couples, when they've experienced infidelity, abuse, there's a lack of respect, there's a lack of mutual connection, whether you're upset with them because of your needs not being met, you start to resent your spouse and you build up this sense of bitterness, and over time you maybe start to feel rejected, not loved, not accepted. So you have to enter into a phase in your relationship where you make a decision to let him make it. But what would you say it takes to to really let a partner make it, especially after they've done something extremely damaging. And does letting them make it mean I have to stay, or can I let them make it and move on with my life?
I think forgiveness is just fundamental in any relationship, but particularly in a marriage.
Okay.
And forgiveness is both for you and your spouse. And that's one of the things that you taught me, because I did not come into this marriage with a good understanding of what forgiveness looked like.
Look,
We got married, I had a list.
child, Lord have
If you
mercy.
were on my list,
List, the list,
you could
the
it was
list.
it was easy to get on the list and hard to get off the
I'm
list.
probably the only one that wasn't worried about your little
You
list.
weren't worried
I'm
about my list.
unbothered about your list.
And so I watched you through your life. I really believe you have the gift of forgiveness, and a grace to forgive. You time and time again forgive over and over and over.
Mhm.
Knowing your history and your childhood, and then even watching how you interact with people, even in ministry, you just are constantly putting yourself in a place of forgiveness. And I remember asking you, like, how do you do this?
Mm.
Like, this person did X, Y, and Z to you. They stole from you. They've said this and that about you in the streets. Like, how do
Yeah.
you continue to be in relationship with this person or available to this person? And you said, God forgives me of so much
Has
daily.
had, man, I have had to be forgiven for a lot. And the fact that God's grace was sufficient for me, how to hold somebody in bondage,
Hmm.
when God constantly lets some things make it concerning me. So I don't know. I stay light. Unforgiveness is extremely heavy,
Heavy. Yeah.
and if it doesn't, unforgiveness has a way to be cancerous in a marriage.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not careful, you'll start to treat your partner in a way that dishonors God.
Hmm.
God cannot be glorified in any marriage where there is not
Where
a
there's
presence,
unforgiveness.
no unforgiveness, and no presence of respect. I
Hmm.
just, if respect has left the marriage, let's go ahead and have that hard conversation.
Hmm.
Let's just call it quits. Let's go, because I don't want to build 20 years with you and not respect you.
Hmm.
I'm unwilling to do it. And I know there are gonna be some in the comments, that's just, that ain't Bible, but miss me at this point, because I'm sorry, just miss me
Not
at this
miss
point.
me.
Because I don't want to be in something that God is not glorified in. I don't want to wake up and not be excited to wake up seeing you next to me. There are people, couples in marriages, in relationships, resenting their spouses,
Hmm.
putting God on top of it, going to church together, serving in church together, doing all of these great things together in church. There is no respect, there is no honor. It's God is not, it's all in lip service, and
Hmm.
it's an issue of the heart.
Right.
So for me to make this marriage work, because I was so serious about being committed to it, I made a decision to never hold anything over your head.
Hmm.
I'm making a decision to move forward,
Okay.
and it will not be until I use later.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
That's one thing that I can appreciate. We both have had to forgive each other for some tough things. We've
yeah,
both done just some bonehead, what were you thinking?
yeah.
Could have been worse things, right? That we have had to forgive each other for. And you're right, it doesn't come up in later conversations. Now, that doesn't mean we talked about it once and it was done. There have been multiple conversations around it. However, it's never something that we use to whip each other with later.
Mm.
To me, that's proof that you've forgiven me, that it's not something that you're holding against me as an ought, in your heart. Even if we have a conversation about it later, it's almost like, forgiveness takes the sting out of it
Mhm.
and allows it to heal. Like, if you've ever been stung by a bee, you can't let it heal with the thing in it. You got to pull the
Remove it.
stinger out and let it. And I think that's what unforgiveness does. It takes the sting. I mean, forgiveness takes the sting out of whatever the transgression was and allows you guys to heal. Now, forgiveness can happen in a moment. It does take time to rebuild trust, though.
That's good. It takes a lifetime to build trust and only a moment to destroy it,
Hmm.
especially in a marriage. There are things that we have gone through that I've had to practice not allowing those things to dominate my mind.
Mm-hmm.
I think what happens is many of us are harassed by the history of our partner and things that they've done as an assault against us, and it dominates our thoughts in a way, and it impacts how we show up. And
Mm-hmm.
I have intentionally, and it is, you know, there are things you've done as beautiful as you are, as as amazing as you are as a mother, as intelligent as you are as a woman, as powerful as you are in the world, and as anointed as you are in the church. You're not so pretty at times.
Mm-hmm.
And there are things that you've done that I appreciate and respect, that and this is language that I've bothered, that you've never done anything to intentionally
Right.
disappoint me or intentionally harm me. Some of the things that were done just through ignorance and
Mm-hmm.
just through just being unaware, and your sensory or your discernment being off, where you're not able to catch something. I think a lot of couples are missing that key ingredients. I think we assume the worst concerning our partners. We always assume the worst intent instead of the best intent. And that's something I felt has given us history where we're able to move forward and move past some things because we trust each other's heart concerning ourselves.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yes, that's key. I think you're right. A lot of couples, when we sit across from them and we hear them talking, you can tell they don't trust each other anymore. I
Mhm,
don't trust that you have my best interest in mind. There's been times where you fumbled, my heart, and you
mhm,
fumbled a situation. And I have to then, trust, like you said, that this didn't come from a place of him intentionally trying to hurt me, although he did,
mhm.
right? Like it's like a car accident. You don't mean to tear somebody's bumper off. Just because it was an accident doesn't mean damage didn't happen.
That's good.
And we've got to assess the damage. So it's the same thing in marriage. We've got to assess the damage of what you did that hurt me, but I have to know that that was not intentional.
That's
That your
good.
heart, did is not in a postured in a way towards me that you would want to hurt me.
That's good. That's good. Give just for a second. Let's we're gonna wrap up this episode. I pray that what we've provided today has been useful, has been beneficial. If you got any value from today's conversation, do us a favor. Let us know in the comments. And if you're new to the channel, welcome to the channel. Welcome to the family. Give us a like, subscribe to the channel, and then turn on those alerts. We're here every single week dropping new episodes, and with the community that we've established, we're doing our best to really analyze the comments and the prayer request, and wrapping episodes around some of your challenges so that we can provide language. And we're working on some resources that we're going to also be providing outside of this. So keep your ear and keep watching our channel. We're going to definitely be dropping some information in that regard. So I pray that today's episode has really been enlightening for you. But I want you to know that there's hope, there's redemption. We believe in New Testament marriages, and we believe there's hope for marriage, and we want you to experience joy in your relationship. So give them some final thoughts on today, that someone who has kind of evaluated our conversation today and they're like, okay, I'm going to try one more time.
Yeah.
What would you say to me?
I would say, congratulations on a renewal of hope. I understand that when you have been in something, particularly where there is a fundamental need that is not being met for an extended period of time, it is a breeding ground for hopelessness. So I'm grateful that there's a spark of hope left for your marriage. Like I said before, divorce is extremely difficult. It is equivalent to a death. And I always tell people, unless you are in something where your safety is being compromised, um, I would not be quick to throw out divorce as an option. If you
Mhm.
are in something where your safety is compromised, do whatever you have to do to be safe. That's your number one priority. We don't want someone being in something that is unsafe for them, mentally, physically, emotionally unsafe. However, God can work miracles in
Mhm.
any situation as long as your heart is postured in a way where He has room to move. I will say that He can turn anything around, any level of infidelity, lack of intimacy, not seeing eye to eye financially, betrayal and distrust. Those things can be rebuilt. Hear me when I say those things can be rebuilt. Also, hear me when I say this is an individual choice and decision. You and your partner need to come together, sit down, have a conversation about where are we really? What do we really have it in us to do? Is it to fight? Or do we say, you know what, it's probably in our best interest to part ways? And know that the grace of God covers both decisions.
Wow.
I know somebody may not agree with me on that, but his grace is sufficient for either decision. If you two decide to stick it out and fight together, know that you're not fighting by yourself. Pastor Ken and I are right there in there with you. Believe it or not, we read over these comments. We are praying over marriages, people that are asking us to pray, people that are saying we don't know what to do, people that are feeling hopeless. We are actually praying over your marriages. We know that God can do anything. So just know you're not in there fighting by yourself. We genuinely care about you all, the health of you individually and collectively, what you are going through. And we are sitting here as a testament to the grace of God, as a testament to what hard work looks like, as a testament to honoring the covenant. And we just want to let you know that we are not an isolated incident. Your marriage can be turned around as well.
Absolutely. I mean, I think after that, there's not really much for me to say. Other than congratulations on a new marriage. That's what I'm praying for.
Yeah.
Let's pray for the people. Do you mind after a heartfelt closing remark? I think it would be great to just pray for the couple. Come on, let's do that.
Okay. Father, we thank you. We know that it's not by accident or coincidence that you have people who have stumbled upon this episode. Our prayer is that they heard your voice in this moment, that there was hope that was reestablished in the heart of someone who has said, you know what, I've tried everything and I'm at my end. We know that you begin where we end. And so, God, we thank you for coming in and touching marriages, touching hurt places, touching hearts, God. Soften hardened hearts, God. Your word declares that you would hold the heart of kings in your hand and you turn it whichever way that you will. God, our prayers that in this moment, someone is hearing this and their heart posture is changing towards their spouse. I thank you that forgiveness is being reintroduced into marriages. Father, I thank you that there is a couple that is hearing this and they are going to give their marriage another try. Father, we come against the plan of the enemy to separate, divide, cause unforgiveness and bitterness to enter into the marriage. We come against every blockage that's in the bedroom, every blockage is in the bank account, every blockage in communication in the name of Jesus. But I thank you that peace would be established and restored in every home. Father, I thank you that what you have joined together, let no man, not even us, pull it asunder. We thank you that you would be the third person that would be in the midst of the marriages, God, that you would strengthen them, that you would give them longevity, that you would let us find joy in our covenant of marriage. God, I thank you not only for the spark of hope, but for the spark of intimacy that is being rekindled in marriages. God, I thank you that couples are falling in love with one another all over again. Restore unto them the joy and the love of their youth, God. I thank you that you're doing something miraculous. I thank you that not many days from now we'll hear testimonies of couples who said, thought we were done. We thought we were at our end, but then God stepped in and turned it around. We give you the praise and the glory and the honor for it in advance. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you all once again so much for checking out Bennett Life TV. Listen, our mission is extremely simple. We're here to help you grow closer in your relationship with God by answering specific questions in the areas that have brought both highs and lows in our life, as marriage, ministry, mental health, and money. Listen, guys, hang around, stick around, check out some of the other episodes on the channel. I promise you, you'll be blessed. Thank you so much for watching today's episode. We're praying for you. Talk soon.